Welcome, it's the Close the Deal show. I'm your host, Terrence McCray. Our motto is, the movement to succeed continues. Every week we bring you business information, tips, and insights from entrepreneurs, business professionals, and inspired individuals from Los Angeles, Pasadena, and beyond. The Close the Deal show also features public announcements, Entrepreneur Week, and small businesses. And if you're looking for strategies to help you in business or to educate the public, then you're in the right place. Thank you for joining us today. My guest today is Dr. Seale. This woman is not only someone that has impacted her community, her family, but most importantly, in her profession. She's here to share with you not only her past experiences in the business world, not only her education, but most importantly, she's here to share with you what empowerment means. And the reason being is Dr. Seale has come a long ways in her success. And the reason why I brought her on this show was to inspire, empower, but in a business perspective way that others can learn from, others can strive to become, and others can move in a direction and realize that they have a gift. And she's here to share more insight into that. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome Dr. Seale.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. Truly, thank you for coming.
This is an honor.
Could you give not only this audience, but could you give the professional world an understanding of your career background?
Well, I started a very long time ago in real estate. Then I thought I wanted to be in escrow, and then I thought I wanted to be a whole lot of things. But in my journey, there have been a lot of ups and downs. I started out, left high school, went to college, flunked out of college. Then I decided, I don't know what I want to do. I went into law, I did all these things. I spent 20 years in big law, and then realized that I didn't have an education and that I needed to do something with my life in order to be able to provide for my son and for myself. And so I decided to go back to school. And between 8 years, I finished 3 degrees.
Wow.
My bachelor's, my
master's.
Hold up.
You finished 3 degrees in 8 years?
3 degrees in 8 years, yes.
That's amazing.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of sacrifice. It was a lot of goal setting and achieving, a lot of not making any excuses. And it was worth it. So currently, I have a nonprofit organization that actually seeks to help people in our community achieve the goals that they've set for themselves, or actually help them to find the goals that they've set for that they need to set for themselves and achieve them. And in addition to that, I have a diversity company that helps people who are in the corporate world to achieve the goals that they have. Because as we all know, we've got a really terrible time with diversity in our organization. So. My journey has actually informed where I am now. So it's been a really interesting and challenging and exciting time for me.
So at what point in your life did you find that goal setting and empowerment work hand in hand?
I think I realized that probably when I was in college flunking, but I wasn't really able to attribute it at that point. We have a lot of high school students who go into college and they don't really know where they're going. They don't really know what they're supposed to be doing. So they get in there and they say, okay, well, I'm supposed to study, but how am I supposed to study? How am I supposed to be successful? How can I do these things that will make me get to that golden prize, which is that degree? And they don't understand that there are goals that they have to set and there are benchmarks that they have to make, and then there are dates that they have to set, and then they have to actually go after it. So, throughout my life, I've seen where when I look for something or when I want to achieve something, I have to actually sit down, I have to actually write it down, I actually have to say, okay, the end goal is here, this is the step, these are the steps to get to where I want to go to, and I have to make myself accountable to make sure each of those steps are hit to get to that goal. And I don't think that was fully realized probably until I was probably in my 30s, but I understood that something needed to happen, but I didn't know how to do it.
So who inspired you to have this vision?
That's a really good question. I think that it came from my parents, unwittingly so, because they're very strong in their values, and they really put a lot of character and work into me. But not like, oh yes, you have to do this, you have to do that. But it was just kind of like organically, it kind of just married into me. And so as I got older, I understood how that really would manifest for me. It wasn't just one day I realized, oh yeah, this is the person who motivated me or who inspired me. When we have parents who actually care and actually put the time and effort into us, I think it actually manifests at a good time in our lives.
You know, they say in business, the average business doesn't last within the first year or so, right? So what was the first obstacle that you had endured that made you feel like you couldn't go on, but you had to find a way to go on?
I think that was when I realized that I wasn't good at selling. When you're an entrepreneur, when you are a small business owner, they say, oh, you know, you're not selling your product, you're selling you.
Okay.
And a lot of us, you know, we've got these amazing ideas and we're gung-ho, we're ready to get in there. But it takes a lot of reflection to realize, oh, wait a minute, I may not be really good at what it is that I'm trying to do. So it takes some reflection. And for me, it came about when I realized, wow, I don't think that I'm necessarily good at selling me. I may be great at selling the product, but then people have to trust you. People have to look at you and they have to say, you know what, I think you can do a good job for me. But I think that I was more into, here is what we provide. This is blah, 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 blah. So it's in being able to connect with your client, being able to connect with what it is that their pain points are, and hitting those pain points, and being able to really be compelling about it. And that's something I think that I still, in this point in my career, am learning. I'm still learning that and perfecting it. So it can be a challenge, but we each have our different strengths and our weaknesses. But for me, that's where it came.
So you have 3 degrees, correct?
I do, yeah.
What are they in?
My bachelor's is in language and linguistics. I got that at Cal State Dominguez. I was fascinated with languages and with how language develops and how it structures our culture. I have my master's in teaching English to speakers of other languages. I thought I wanted to be a teacher and to people who speak other languages, so that was really important to me. And my doctorate is in organizational change and leadership. And so with that, I go into organizations and I look at their culture, I look at their diversity or lack thereof, and I advise them on how to make their organizations what they claim their organizations are. So we have a lot of organizations that say, oh, well, we're the best for women, or we're the best for LGBTQIA+. And when you actually get into the organizations, it's a whole different situation. So we actually give them integrity with what it is that they say.
So if you were in a room right now full of potential organizations that wanted to hire you, what would be your pitch?
My pitch would be that I work with their D&I, which is their diversity and inclusion departments.
What if they don't have one?
Well, then we would be that. We would be that.
Okay.
We actually would. We have a framework that works with their organization to build out, to assess, to ensure that they have a culture that is ready, that's hospitable for diverse groups, whatever diversity that they're looking for, because, and we would actually make that happen.
And how would you implement that from the ground up within a time frame that you see fits?
Well, that's where the change management component comes in. So when we marry change management with diversity. So what we do is we look at the organization, we assess it, we do surveys, we interview everyone, we look at the metrics, we look at peer organizations, and we ensure that they are ready. If they're not ready, then we start with the programs. We start implementing programs and different initiatives that would prepare their ecosystem to bring in the diversity that they say that they seek. So it's actually a long process. It can be 6 months, it could be a year before any organization is actually ready for the diversity that they're saying that they want. And this is kind of one of the issues with diversity in organizations, is that we bring in a diversity and inclusion officer and we say, okay, now fix our racism problem. But the problem is we can't fix the racism problem unless the organization's ready and they're committed to do that. And that's what takes the time, because it's a human behavioral issue, not necessarily the other issues that they're looking at.
So how did you set a skill set to empower yourself with educating people on something that you knew to be a problem?
I think I saw it firsthand. And when I saw it, I was working in big law. And part of my dissertation actually was looking at the challenges that African American female attorneys faced. And the data spoke for itself. At the close of the Civil War, 2% of the attorney population was African American females. And as of 2018, the percentage of the population that were lawyers that were African American were 2.4%. So we've only grown 0.4%.
Correct.
Over these hundreds of years. And I saw it firsthand where we did not have the diversity. I mean, not even just African Americans, not even just Latinas, not even just across the board. So I sought to figure out what were those issues? What is going on here? Why is it that we can't bridge that gap? So in my research, I was able to figure out and hear from a lot of very discontented women about the challenges that they faced. So from that, I used that data to build a framework in order to really go into the organizations. And that's what informed the fact that it needs to be a change management situation along with diversity instead of just diversity itself.
So when you develop these abilities, what made you go independent and not just work in a company and just change the morale?
Well, working within a company, you have parameters, right? You have a fixed structure where an organization will say, yes, we want this group. We want more African Americans. We want more whatever, Native Americans. But where are they recruiting from? And what happens when they come in? So an organization has this structure that if you're within the organization, you have to work within. When you're outside of the organization, you actually have much more leverage where you can advise and you can say, okay, this is what I'm seeing. This is what's happening. And this is what you're saying you want. But in reality, if you continue this way, or if you work within these particular parameters, you're never going to reach that goal. And if you want to be authentic about it, we need to start from the top. It's very, very difficult for someone who's in the organization to say, CEO, you're the problem. It's much easier for a consultant to come in and say, you know what, here are the ground rules, this is how we're working.
Okay.
So that's why working outside of the organization is actually something that's preferred.
What did you find challenging in the last 6 months dealing with various organizations that you work with right now?
I would say their resistance to change. Resistance to change is something that I think that we don't give enough time and effort to. We will say that we want something. Oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to stop smoking, or I want to whatever. But when that morning comes, at night you're like, yeah, I'm going to get up and I'm going to work out and I'm going to stop eating blah, blah, blah. And that morning comes and you're like, I think I'm going to start tomorrow.
Yes.
And this is what happens in organizations.
Okay.
Everyone, they have a good heart. Everyone, they mean well. But when that moment comes, or when it gets hot, when you get into an argument or whatever, stuff comes out. That thing that's within that, what we want to call unconscious bias, or the microaggressions, all that, it comes out. So and that's the resistance, right? That's the change, and that's what we need to work on. And people don't really want to be, they don't want to be as forthcoming about some of the challenges that they have with these things which causes a resistance when you actually point them out. Say, hey, you know what, I noticed that about you. No, I'm not a racist, or whatever. So that's a lot of the challenges that we have.
So what motivates you to continue to make change?
I have a 13-year-old boy.
Okay.
And when I look at what the world is right now, and I consider what he is going to graduate into and the working world that he's going to be in, I feel that it's incumbent upon me to work toward making that change so that when he steps in and people like him step in, that it's actually going to be a better situation. I'm one, all my friends will tell you, what do you want to do, Dr. Seale? I want to change the world. Okay. I always say that. I want to change the world. And that's with one organization, one person, one situation at a time.
Okay.
But because I have this legacy that I'm bringing up and people like him, that's my motivation.
How do you get him to see both sides and not just the perspective of your skill level? How do you get him to know what that emotional feeling is like? So you've developed a way to empower yourself to get through certain circumstances, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And you're sharing that information with these viewers from two perspectives, mm-hmm. a human perspective mm-hmm. and a business. Mm-hmm. But for your child, how does he really understand not just your perspective, mm-hmm. but the other side?
That's a tough one, because there was a time where I didn't have the skill set to teach him.
Okay.
And he experienced some of the challenges that young black men face in the world. And when he came to me, I did not have the words to say. And I didn't know how to help him through that. So this is actually part of why I started taking on understanding organizational behavior, human behavior, because when someone is going through something that they don't really understand, he's so young, and I need to help him through it because I'm his mom, it's helping him to see that, okay, everyone is not awful, and everyone's not great. We need to be able to see the complexities of humanity and how people behave and why they behave the way that they do. So it's been a long process of helping him to understand how people behave, understand decision making, why people make certain decisions, how to be impeccable with his word, how to make sure that he remembers what it feels like so that he doesn't exact it on someone else. And that actually has been, and that's like empathy, that's in teaching empathy. That has actually been the much more effective approach in saying, hey, remember when you felt that way when that person did that? And then it's the realization, oh yeah, okay. And this is how we learn those lessons. And actually that's one of the tools that we use when we're dealing with organizations. Because a lot of people, they can't empathize with your experience or my experience. But if we teach them empathy, if we teach them, hey, feel this, walk a mile in my shoe, it can be quite effective.
So, what advice did you give yourself, or did you receive from someone that motivated you to go back to school?
I had to give it to myself because everybody thought I was crazy. The advice I gave to myself was, if you want to be in this same situation 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, you will allow the excuses that you're telling yourself to convince you to stay here. I took on a quote that has moved me through this entire journey. And that quote is, aim beyond what you're capable of. Aim beyond what you're capable of. I was terrified. I was an older student. I'd worked, of course, but I didn't know that I could hit that mark. And I was scared. I was intimidated. I was insecure. But because I knew that I did not want to be making the amount that I was making 2 years from now, 3 years from now, I took the plunge. And then that turned into, okay, a master's degree. Okay, I want to be making more than I'm making, and I want to be able to provide the life that I promised my son I would make for him. So let me try even harder. And then I continued to push it really fed off of itself. And there were excuses. There were times I lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of connections. I was up 2, 3 in the morning while my son was sleeping. There's a lot of sacrifice, but it was and it continues to be worth it.
So what classes do you teach today?
Oh, so yes, I am a professor. I teach in the MBA program at the University of Redlands. And I teach organizational behavior. I teach how to lead teams, how to lead individuals, structuring your organization's leadership styles, and conflict resolution, change management, things of that nature. So it's really interesting seeing people evolve from in their, especially the conflict resolution arena, because people have a very interesting way of dealing with conflict, and that's usually based on their personality. So it's in helping them to develop those skills in, okay, this is a conflict right here, and normally I would say this, but because of what I've learned, this is what I'm going to say. So it's really interesting to see that evolution.
So how did you apply that in business?
Oh my gosh. It is nothing but conflict. When you're doing like change management and diversity work, conflict is an ever-present part of what you do. So it's in knowing your environment, it's in knowing what your normal reaction would be, and it's in knowing the person that you're dealing with or the people that you're dealing with, and how they would respond. It's really important to understand your element when you are dealing with conflict. And there's different steps, initiating conversations, the feedback loop, things of that
Could
nature.
you give us a previous experience?
Well, yes, I was working with an organization, and we had an African American woman who was the only one in her organization. And she did not want to be a part of anything that we were doing. She did not want to deal with, any change management, any diversity strategies, anything, because she did not feel that it was ever going to work. But it all was because she had actually made a complaint. It was actually because of her. And so when I walked into the room, she was even resistant. Why do I have to deal with, why are you putting 2 black women together? So she wouldn't even talk to me. So what I had to do was I had to actually bring in one of my other team members who was not African American and sit in on it and kind of guide the conversation, because in observing her behavior and her resistance to the conversations we were having or the conversations we needed to have, I needed to actually make sure that there was enough information for her to understand that this was actually necessary, and that we approached it in a way that was sensitive enough for her to start trusting us, to understand that this was something that was actually going to eventually benefit her in her work environment. And I think we were successful with her, because eventually, she spilled all the beans. But it was approaching it very delicately initially, but it does require you to not wear your heart on your sleeve and not be so sensitive about
Correct.
People being upset with you or whatever. So it's interesting work.
I can imagine, because ideally, right, when we talk about empowerment, we talk about strengths and different abilities to have in making things better for other people as well as yourself.
Yeah.
So to hear your own background and to learn your story, from the professional side, it's amazing to know that every challenge you face, you found something to strengthen you. No matter what it was, you found the ability to understand whether it was a positive quote, whether it was an affirmation, whether it was your son. You looked at something or heard something and gave yourself that motivation to basically what my motto is: the movement to succeed continues.
Absolutely.
So this is why it's important that even on a local level in business, we all as business people need to work with one another and communicate and share information, because ideally, right, if we want to succeed, we have to seek that knowledge.
Absolutely.
We have to seek that knowledge. And I understand everybody has a service and some things cost, but if there was one particular thing that someone came to ask you regarding what you do professionally, what would you let them know about your character?
I think that I'm, and is evidenced in my journey, I think that I'm a woman of dogged determination. I think I'm a woman of integrity. I'm an extremely hard worker. And as you know, it will get done. It is something within me to make sure that I'm authentic and that I live up to what it is that I say I'm going to do. I have a brief story if we have time. I was doing my dissertation, and I had maybe, it was Friday night, my paper was due the next day, and I called my professor because I wasn't able to finish it. And I said, hey, professor, I can't get my paper done. I'm sorry. And he said, I gave him every excuse in the world. Every excuse, oh, you know, it was, the dog ate my homework, I don't know, whatever. And so he said, all right, thank you, Shindale, I understand, you know, but if there's one thing I know about you, if it takes you till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning to get that thing on my desk, you're gonna do it. Click, and he hung up in my face.
Wow.
And I got that paper done. I took from 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. I had it formatted, I had all the references done, but that's because I committed to doing that. I was accountable to myself. So I'll leave you with one quote, my last quote. If you want to take the island, burn the ships. That's Tony Robbins.
Wow. Truly amazing, truly amazing. Well, Dr. Seale, I would like to thank you for not only coming on the show, but inspiring our viewers to learn more about not what you do professionally, but more about themselves and how they can be empowered and get up off the couch and do something with their own lives and being successful. Thank you for coming on the show.
No problem at all. No problem at all.
Before we close this deal.
Hi, I'm Spencer Christian, formerly of Good Morning America, now with ABC7 in San Francisco. I am a big fan of Terrence McRae and the Close the Deal show. In fact, I'm such a big fan, I'm going to be on the show with Terrence in Los Angeles, California. Check it out.
If you would love to hear from us, you have suggestions, or even want to apply, be a guest on the show, go to www.theclosethedealshow. Please subscribe on my YouTube channel, like and comment on your favorite episode. Take good care, everyone. Don't forget, find the right connection and certainly close the deal.